Good morning to one and all, and welcome to yet another edition of Satyavani. I am Sayuk Fulsresh, the editor for the day and day dated 12th May 2021. As we struggle through the second wave of COVID 19, let's have a look at today's news bulletin. Now, let's move on to Tanya for the COVID update. Over to you, Tanya.
Thank you, Sayuk. Moving on, Corona updates. Maharashtra, Delhi, UP. So, decline in daily COVID cases center. Maharashtra, the country's financial capital, Delhi, the national capital, and Uttar Pradesh, the most populous state, were the worst COVID hit regions but have shown a continuous decline in the daily COVID-19 cases, said the health minister on Tuesday. It also mentioned that daily cases were on the decline in Madhya Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Jharkhand, Telangana, Chandigarh, Ladakh, Daman and Diu, Lakshadweep, and Andaman and Nicobar Islands. The national positive rate stands at 21%, said the minister. The union government is in discussion with states to contain the spread of COVID-19, said the health minister spokesperson Love Agarwal. Last week, the Supreme Court praised Mumbai's response to the spread of COVID-19, proposing that the Mumbai model be replicated in Delhi. In late April, Maharashtra announced a series of restrictions titled Break the Chain to combat the deadly spike in coronavirus cases in the state. Mumbai on Monday recorded a steep drop in new COVID-19 cases at 1,794, the lowest single-day count in nearly 2 months. Delhi, which in its fourth week for lockdown, has recorded 12,481 COVID-19 cases and 347 deaths over the last 24 hours. The positive rate has dropped from 90% to 7.7%. This is the lowest since April 14 when the positive rate for around 36%. Uttar Pradesh too is under a lockdown till May 17 to stem the spread of the virus. The World Health Organization has labeled the COVID variant spreading in India as a variant of concern. Now moving on to Avni for national updates.
Thank you, Tanya. 3 militants shot dead in Jammu and Kashmir's Anantnag. Security forces launched a cordon and search operation in Vailu in Komarnag area of the district early Tuesday. 3 militants have been killed in an ongoing operation against hiding militants in South Kashmir's Anantnag on Tuesday. A police spokesman said 3 bodies were found at the encounter site in Vailu area of Kokarnag belt in South Kashmir's Anantnag. The encounter started early in the morning when the hiding militants refused to surrender, the police said. The identity and affiliation of the 3 slain is being ascertained, the police added. A joint team of police, armies 19RR and CRPF are carrying on the operation. The search is on in the area, the police said. Now let's move to Sneha for further updates.
Thank you, Avni. HC to take up Central Vista work plea. The Delhi High Court on Tuesday heard an application seeking a stay on all construction at the Central Vista here amid the ranking COVID-19 pandemic. Senior advocate Siddharth Luthra, representing the petitioner, told a bench of Chief Justice D.N. Patel and Justice Jasmeet Singh that the Supreme Court on May 7 asked the petitioner to seek urgent hearing before the High Court on May 10. Petitioner Anya Malhotra, a translator, and Sohail Hashmi, a historian and documentary filmmaker, had moved the Supreme Court against the High Court's May 4 order adjourning their plea to May 17. The Supreme Court said that since the case was already pending before the High Court, it did not want to enter into its merits. However, the bench said the case could be heard by the High Court as early as possible. Mr. Luthra had told the top court that the workers were carried by bus from Karol Bagh, Kirti Nagar, Karai Kalem Khan. The work seems to continue owing to a stringent deadline. Mr. Luthra said also referred to a disaster management authority circular which had directed construction activities except where labours are residing on site be stopped. He said the petitioner were only concerned with construction work on Rajpath Center Vista and Garden Stretches. Now moving on to Arush for more updates.
Thank you, Sneha. We are getting some devastating news from Andhra Pradesh, where 11 patients die in a hospital after oxygen supply gets disrupted. 11 COVID-19 patients died at a hospital in Tirupati in Andhra Pradesh's Chittor district on Monday after the supply of medical oxygen was disrupted, reported the Indian Express, citing officials. The incident took place in the intensive care unit ward of the Sri Venkateswara Ram Narayan Ruya Government General Hospital after a tanker carrying oxygen was delayed. On Monday, District Collector M. Hari Narayana said while the 11 patients on oxygen support died, they were able to save many others. Nearly 1,000 coronavirus patients were being treated at the hospital from Tirupati, Chittor, Nellore, and Kadapa. There was a 5-minute lag in reloading the oxygen cylinder that caused the pressure to drop, resulting in the deaths, Narayana said, reported NDTV. The oxygen supply was restored within 5 minutes and everything is now normal. We have connected bulk cylinders and there is no reason to worry. A major disaster was averted because of quick action by medical staff. Chief Minister Y.S. Jagan Mohan Reddy has condoled the deaths and ordered an inquiry into the incident. Earlier on Monday, Reddy had held a review meeting on the coronavirus situation in the state, including measures to increase oxygen supply. We are receiving a similar but an even more devastating news from Goa, where 26 COVID-19 patients have died in a medical hospital. Goa Health Minister Vishwajit Rane on May 11th said 26 COVID-19 patients died at the state-run Goa Medical College and Hospital in the early hours and sought an investigation by the High Court to find out the exact cause. And with that, we move to Mansi for updates from another city.
Thank you, Arush. UP police registered FIR against ex-IAS officer who criticized government COVID-19 management. Lucknow, the Uttar Pradesh police have registered an FIR against retired IAS officer Surya Pratap Singh for spreading rumors on social media after Singh tried to draw Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath's attention towards alleged crime neglected by some officials in Varanasi. IAS officer had tweeted about how the body of a patient who died of COVID-19 in a local government hospital was eventually reported fished out of a drain close to the hospital. The patient was missing from the hospital for 2 days and his family members were looking for him. By sharing the video on social media, Singh sought to alert the Chief Minister that his visit to divisional headquarters now were not enough to contain the surge of COVID-19. He needed to do more. The FIR against Singh had been lodged with the Lanka Police Station of Varanasi under the Pandemic Act, Section 66 of the IT Act. Now moving on to Surbhi for more city updates.
Thank you, Mansi. UP BJP leaders question Yogi government on state's COVID management. The Yogi Adityanath government in Uttar Pradesh may put a brave front and remain in denial of a COVID crisis, but the rising complaints and unease within the Bharatiya Janata Party leadership paints another picture. Everything is not changasi. On Sunday 9 May, the State Health Department reported 23,333 new COVID cases and 296 deaths. These are official numbers which may not include the 45 bodies found floating in the Ganga River in Buxar. The authorities claimed that the bodies had been thrown into the river upstream in Uttar Pradesh. Over the past few days, MPs and MLAs have publicly complained to the UP Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath, saying that there is a shortage of oxygen beds, medical equipment, and that patients are dying in a vein without receiving any medical support. Meanwhile, CM Adityanath had denied any shortage of any kind and on the contrary asked officials to take action under the National Security Act and the Gangster Act against anti-social elements who spread rumors and propaganda on social media. Thank you. Now moving on to Muskan for some international news.
Thank you, Surbhi. Sustainable business Amazon raises $1 billion sustainable bond for climate social causes. Amazon issued its first sustainability bond on Monday, raising $1 billion to invest in renewable energy, clean transport, greener buildings, and affordable housing. The world's biggest company joins a growing list of debt issuers tapping the market for green and sustainable bonds, which is swelling as asset managers come under pressure from their investors to advance environmental, social, and governance causes. Global green bond issuance reached a high record of $270 billion at the end of 2020 and could reach $450 billion this year, according to Climate Bonds Initiative. Amazon has pledged to reach net zero carbon emissions by 2040 and to power all its operations with renewable energy by 2030, as well as increase opportunities for underrepresented groups in its workforce. The decision to raise money to fund social projects comes Amazon fends off criticism for its treatment of its workers and its business boom during the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as being castigated for poor health and safety practices during the early months of pandemic. Amazon has also been criticized for illegally firing and pressuring staff not to form a union and at one of its sites. Amazon has denied these allegations and said it supports employees' rights to criticize work conditions. Thank you. Now moving on to Shubhankar for some more updates.
Thank you, Muskan. England reports zero daily COVID-19 deaths for first time since July 2020. England reported zero daily coronavirus deaths for the first time since last year on Monday. UK Chief Medical Officer also lowered the COVID-19 alert level to 3, which means coronavirus transmission isn't rising exponentially, but the virus is in general circulation. In total, 4 deaths and 2,357 cases were recorded in 24 hours in UK on the same day. But England, Scotland, and Ireland reported zero fatality. However, Wales reported 4 coronavirus-related deaths, and the number comes as UK Chief Medical Officers lowered the alert level. Chief Medical Officer appreciated public's effort in social distancing and impact they are seeing from vaccination program. This steady progress relies on us remaining vigilant and careful as we unlock, the Chief Medical Officer said. Thank you. And now moving on to Harish for the opening bell.
Today's opening bell of the day. Sensex drops 250 points. Nifty slips below 14,800. HDFC falls 2%. NTPC, ONGC rise 2% each. Following the petrol and diesel prices updates, petrol diesel prices rise for third consecutive day. Petrol on May 12, the price for petrol and diesel were hiked by 25 paise per liter from the previous day in the national capital. Thank you. Now let's move on to Sinele for the next updates.
Thank you, Harish, for the opening bell. Now for today's business headline. Ola to provide oxygen concentrators for free through app. Ola Foundation, the philanthropic arm of ride-hailing company Ola, on Monday announced a partnership with Give India to provide oxygen concentrators to consumers for free through the Ola app. The service will be rolled out in Bengaluru this week with an initial set of 500 oxygen concentrators. Ola and Give India will scale it up across the country with up to 10,000 concentrators in the coming weeks. The entire experience will be seamless, and the oxygen concentrator, as well as the doorstep delivery and pickup, will be completely free for customers. Bhavish Agarwal, Chairman and Group CEO Ola, said, and I quote, "We must come together and help our communities during these unprecedented times. With the O2 for India initiative in partnership with Give India, we will provide free and easy access to oxygen concentrators to those in need. We hope this initiative brings much needed support during these very difficult times and helps in mitigating the pain and the anxiety among those impacted." Unquote. Thank you, and now it's time for the editorial of the day.
Thank you, Sunil. The most important function of a poet, and Sab Sangasi with a question mark. Being a poet has its own curses and boons. It allows one to feel others' pains, happiness, sorrows, and countless other feelings, or in a way, seeing the world through others' eyes and write what they feel. But the situation that surrounds one and all keeps me in a tighter spot. And when you see pain and sorrow all around you, it's natural to process and write about it. But there seems no end to it, this process in the days that are passing by. Consequences of sheer negligence due to overconfidence that the current regime has shown in handling the COVID catastrophe is making everyone suffer. And better late than never, people are coming together to make sure that they are being heard. Even when all the efforts are made to make sure everything is covered up. Here, social media has become the drumbeat that is making even deaf government hear for once. Slogans like Modi hai to mumkin hai have changed to Modi jawab do, hashtag Modi resign, and Man ki baat sunoge to kaam ki baat reh jayegi. It's quite astounding that the people are coming together and are telling the government what they should have done or what they are doing wrong in the most humorous and threatening way possible. In one of the holy texts, it's written that the worst possible addiction is the feeling of being all powerful, and the current regime very sadly seems to be suffering from the same. Many states and even the national capital are amongst the ones that are most hit, as the government seems to be believing in a jumla that they have given a long time back. Sab changa si. Sometimes it pains that there are cases of dead teachers due to election duties. The hospitals are giving out circulars that to take patients away as medical system has collapsed and there are no oxygen cylinders, beds, medicines, and even vaccines. However, the government is at the top of their game of protecting its own image at all costs, even if it involves naming serious questions and accusations as national or even international conspiracies to defame them and the country. The creme de la creme is the countless goons and baboons that are ready to do anything to make sure that the image protection plan is always a success. And the worst part is that the fourth pillar, the mainstream media, has joined the show. This bandwagon of goons and baboons keep praising and protecting the image of the government as if the top leaders are not elected representatives but supreme leaders of the country. They even sometimes call it selective criticism and blame the question why the questions are not asked from the opposition, even though power and the simple command over the regime in finding scapegoats is no doubt commendable. The late addition to the list of events is that legislature has actually managed very politely to tell the judiciary to buzz off, as because a very recent affidavit issued by the center to the Supreme Court says that its vaccination policies has been framed to ensure equitable distribution and there was little room for judicial interference in these matters at the time of pandemic. This answer when the judiciary is already very late to realize that it's their duty to stand for the people and by the people if no one is listening to them. Finally, after criticizing the government, I must also make sure that the people know that they are also equally responsible. Sometimes it's difficult to decide whether the people have been hypnotized into forgetting the very basic definition of democracy, which is for the people, from the people, and by the people, and they are the real kings of the democratic system and have the privilege to show the PM his place of being a civilian's servant. However, this does not seem to be the case anymore. It seems that this is due to the ability of the government to do man ki baat rather than kaam ki baat, because the regime which was at the very basic cause of migrant labor crisis was able to win elections in the states that suffered the most. Adding to all this, in the budget, they firstly allocated and then thousands of crores on structures and policy that have close to no importance or contribution towards country's growth and development, and these are nothing more than a bunch of dead investments in the current scenario. The same regime, when was asked to fight a COVID crisis, made a fund and did not even bother to make the account public. In the language of political satire, it almost sounded like erecting a useless but costly structure, no problem at all. But fighting a pandemic, let's beg from the public, and no need to tell them about where we use the money. Well, this is how the government is managing or damaging things. But being a poet makes me pessimist and optimist at the same time. And both pessimism and optimism sit on both of my shoulders and clutter my brain, which sometimes disables me to decide that is the future ahead bright or dark, and will the supreme leaders manage or damage things, and at what collateral cost. As the pandemic is not to wind up itself anytime soon, I think it is okay to be answerless, or even better, patiently wait and watch what the future has in store for us, and at what cost. Because I think the most important function of a poet is to observe. Now let's move to Aman for the op-ed.
Thank you, Sayuk, for such a powerful piece, I must say. And sure, the times are tough, but the winds of change are coming. Now, for the op-ed piece, the House must sit. As the pandemic comes home across the country in mounting numbers, there are as many as 306 districts now with positivity rate of 20% or higher. There is no one in the House. The executive and the judiciary can be seen and heard in the public health emergency. The executive, not nearly enough. The judiciary, reassuringly for helpless citizens, more and more. But the third arm of the state, the legislature, appears to be missing. Parliament's absence in the crisis has been marked, most recently by Congress MP and its leader in Lok Sabha, Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary, who has written a letter to the President Ramnath Kovind and the LS Speaker Om Birla, asking for special session to discuss the response of COVID. Earlier, his colleague in the Congress and leader of opposition in Rajya Sabha, Mallikarjun Kharge, wrote to Prime Minister Modi and Rajya Sabha Chairman Venkaiah Naidu, calling for virtual parliamentary standing committee meetings. The two senior opposition leaders have pointed to an important stillness in the time when it is especially critical for governments to listen and learn, to correct mistakes and find the best way forward. The response to a national crisis such as this one needs to draw in all the people's representatives across states and whichever their party to battle a scourge that has brought death and distress to every constituency. MP must pool ideas and resources, ask questions and apply the check and balance. The House must reopen its doors, even if virtually, to ensure that the executive does not remain confined to echo chambers of its own making. Now, on to Arush for the cartoon of the day.
धन्यवाद अमन। कार्टून है सतीश का एक और कार्टून जो हमें सोचने पर मजबूर करता है। हिंदू भी मरता है, मुसलमान भी मरता है। जब सियासत धर्मों में घुसती है, बेवक्त हर वक्त इंसान मरता है। And with that, we move to Agastya, who with his sports update might have got some good news for all the Manchester United fans. Over to you, Agastya.
Thank you, Arush, for that cartoon. Now, over to the sports news. Agent offers Ronaldo to Manchester United. Agent Jorge Mendes has offered Juventus's Cristiano Ronaldo to Manchester United, according to journalist Fabio Santini. The old lady are on the cusp of failing to qualify for next season's Champions League campaign, causing a major increase in speculation surrounding potential exits, including the manager. It would seem impossible that we could secure his future without entry to the Champions League. But the player's mind may already be made up of a campaign in which CR7 stomached much of the blame for our Champions League exit to Porto, amongst other failings. The agent's proposal to the English club was as follows: a 2-year contract for around a season, a much lower figure than the one currently perceived by the former Real Madrid player at Juventus. Weeks if Cristiano Ronaldo will reach an economic agreement with Manchester. Would Juve stand in Ronaldo's way if he pushed to the exit door? Could we have an agreement to let him leave if we fail to cement a place in the top 4? Now with that, we move on to Ritika for some crime news.
Thank you, Agastya. Crime beat. Two brothers kill youngest, now absconding in Hyderabad. Hyderabad, Two brothers reportedly killed their younger brother on Sunday in Mangalhat police station limits. The deceased Prasad, 22, was addicted to alcohol and it was regular for him to return home drunk and argue with his family. The eldest Mahendra, along with his wife and mother, moved to the next lane in the same limits, Gugganagar Mangalhat, while the middle brother Narendra, along with his wife, moved to IDA Bolaram. Even after the divide, Prasad would continuously visit Mahendra and ask him money for alcohol. Both the brothers vexed with Prasad's behavior, went to his place of residence, and the trio's heated argument triggered them, leading Mahendra to reportedly strangle the victim with a dupatta. A neighbor, Varanasi Krishna, 48, who heard the screams in the morning, came outside to fill water and saw the duo exiting the house. He questioned him about the screams last night and became suspicious when they said nothing. Finding the door open, Krishna entered the home and found Prasad lying on the floor with a dupatta wrapped around his neck. He immediately informed the police. The police sent the body for post-mortem. The brothers are absconding. Thank you. Now moving on to Bobby for a science and tech update.
Thank you, Ritika. NASA spacecraft starts trip back to Earth after collecting samples from asteroid Bennu. A NASA spacecraft, which scientists believe has collected samples from an asteroid, began its 2-year journey back to Earth on Monday. NASA's OSIRIS-REx spacecraft is attempting to complete a mission to visit Bennu, a skyscraper-sized asteroid some 200 million miles from Earth, survey the surface, collect samples and deliver them back to Earth. The spacecraft found traces of hydrogen and oxygen molecules, part of the recipe for water and thus the potential for life embedded in the asteroid's rocky surface, said Dante Loretta, the OSIRIS-REx mission principal investigator in 2018. The trip back to Earth will take about 2 years. The spacecraft will then eject a capsule containing the asteroid samples, which NASA says will land in a remote area of Utah. NASA says samples will be distributed to research laboratories worldwide, but 75% of the samples will be preserved at the Johnson Space Center in Houston for future generations to study with technologies not yet created. Now moving on to Sinile for some entertainment news.
Before we move on to Sinle, we have some updates coming by Reuters from Jerusalem. 35. The death toll has risen to 35 in Gaza and 3 in Israel violence, which is reported to be the heaviest offensive between Israel and Hamas since 2014. Now, on to Sinle for a look in the entertainment world.
Thank you, Bobby and Aman, for the breaking news. And now, yes, moving on to the entertainment news of the day. Dia Mirza on her early days in Bollywood. People were making sexist cinema, and I was a part of these stories. Bollywood actor Dia Mirza made her debut in movies with the 2001 film Rehna Hai Tere Dil Mein, and her journey in the entertainment industry has had several ups and downs. In an interview with Brood India, the actor opened up about her early days in the film industry and the rampant sexism that existed those days. Dia said, and I quote, "People were trying, thinking, and making sexist cinema, and I was a part of these stories. Rehna Hai Tere Dil Mein has sexism in it," unquote. She also gave an example stating that during those times, a makeup artist could only be a man and the job of a hairdresser could only be done by a woman. She also spoke about her choices in those early days and how they were driven completely by instinct. "I had no mentor and no one who could guide me or help me understand how to go about consolidating my choices or even making the right choices. I kind of completely and solely depended on instinct and my managers at the time," she said. Thank you. And now for the offbeat, Agastya will take it over from here.
Thank you, Sinile, for that somewhat heart-wrenching news of Dia Mirza. Now, moving on to the offbeat. An Italian woman received 6 doses of Pfizer COVID vaccine. In a series of uncanny events to happen in the post-COVID world, unheard of has come of light. A question common across social media platforms and vaccines is whether 2 doses are enough, whether doses of different companies may be mixed, and how effective a single dose is. The woman had erroneously received the doses news agency AGI reported Monday. Fortunately, the woman did not suffer any adverse side effects after receiving 6 full doses of the vaccine. Soon after, she received the unprecedented amounts of vaccine, fluid, and paracetamol were used to ensure her well-being. The mistake occurred after a nurse mistakenly injected one whole vial of the vaccine instead of the dose, which is equivalent to 6 doses of the vaccine. No such cases of overdose have been known before. The most overdose for the Pfizer so far is estimated at 4 doses. Pfizer on Monday announced that there is no evidence that an adaptation of BioNTech's current COVID-19 vaccine against key identifying emerging variants is necessary. The vaccine is currently being administered in 90 countries around the world. Soon, the company will start producing vaccines in Singapore, which it has identified as its headquarters for the Southeast Asian region. And now, back to Sanyu.
Well, thank you, Agastya. But however, the incident was quite weird, to be honest. So finally, we have come to the end of today's news bulletin. We thank all our reporters across India for their insightful stories and hope for their cooperation in future. We will meet you same place next time. Until then, Satyavani signing off. Stay home, stay healthy, and stay safe. Thank you.